Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Succulent. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we're going to be building a beautiful garden. We're going to be having all sorts of different succulent flowers and putting down flower beds, and we're going to be using water droplets into our greenhouses to help us out as well, trying to complete projects using clippings from flowers. Today we're taking a look at Succulent. This is from Alex Kavern and it's published by Renegade Game Studios. So let me show you how this game's played and I'll see you on the other side. The object of the game is to have the most points at the end, and the main ways to get points is to complete projects. And they're going to give you certain points at the end of the game, and you'll complete these by turning in certain resources, which are the different cuttings that you see here. More detail on how this works later. And the other main way to get points is to have large droplets in your greenhouse scoring next to it. Again, we'll go over how you get these here later. The game is played over multiple rounds. Each round, each player will take a single turn, beginning with the start player and going clockwise. In step 1, performing an action, you have two choices. This is a mandatory step. You can choose to either place a flower bed or gain a flower bed. Let's first talk about placing a flower bed. When placing a flower bed, you'll place it onto the garden. And when you do so, you might do something like this. Now when you place a flower bed, you'll take one of your flowers and you'll place it in the round circle. Now, you will be getting cuttings for everything that you cover. In this case, there's 2 orange flowers. This is denoting and letting everyone know that this flower bed is for the player playing the white color, but this player would then immediately gain 2 cuttings of orange. Now let's talk about some placement rules of these flower beds. Let's say another player already had a flower bed like this. It's the blue player, as you can tell from that flower on there. When you place a flower bed, you cannot have it overlap in any way, shape, or form onto another flower bed. Also, you cannot place it so that it goes off the edge onto a face down garden plot. And if this happened to have been the end of the garden, you cannot overhang it so that it goes off the plot. So let's say that player already had that garden bed there. Now if I place it over these two, notice that this has a small water droplet there. So if I place it like this, I'm going to get cuttings from purple and orange, but because I'm placing it on here, I would also get a small water droplet. Remember to always place your flower color on top of your flower bed. So you would have gotten a purple and orange cutting and that small water droplet, which you can place in any open water spot in your greenhouse. Now we'll talk about what these do a little bit later, but you're trying to fill up different sections completely because that will help you fulfill projects a little bit later. We'll go into the details of that later and some more of the rules of placing in your greenhouse. Now when placing a flower bed, if that new flower bed is adjacent, not diagonal, but orthogonally adjacent to any other player's flower, like it is here, this player will get one of those small water droplets. But it could also be your own flower. So if the player with the white flowers plays here next turn with a small flower bed, it's adjacent to their other flower bed with the same flower. Theirs, they're white. So because that's adjacent to this, they would also get a small water droplet. Now in this example, we're going to place this medium one right here, and this player is going to get a water droplet because it's covering this one, but none of the other players' flowers are adjacent. They're all diagonal. This is diagonal from this is diagonal from this, and this is diagonal from this. Therefore, none of these players are going to get water droplets for this reason, but this player will get it because they placed it right on top as shown previously. Now I mentioned in the perform an action step, it's mandatory and you can either place a flower bed or gain a flower bed. So far I've showed you how to place a flower bed, but instead of doing that, you could have gained a flower bed. How you do this is you look at one of the project cards, and if there's a space open in the bottom right of there, you will take your gardener and you'll place it there and you'll get those flower beds. For example, if I went here, I would get a single large flower bed into my supply. If I place it here, I'd get a small and a medium. Now let's say it looked like this and I wanted to gain a flower bed. I can't pick it up and put it down on the same card, and I can't put it where anybody else's gardener is. So if I wanted to gain a flower bed right now, my only option would be to go here, which would get a large and a small. Now after you've performed an action, which is either placing a flower bed or gaining flower beds, you go to the second step of your turn, and this is optional where you can complete one of these projects. So for example, let's say I had these cuttings in my own supply. I could turn those back into the general supply in order to complete this project because these match up what this card's requirements are. You then place this card in your own area. Remember, this will give you points at the end of the game, but some of them give you bonuses, like in this case I would get an orange cutting. Then you make sure to take the top card of the project deck and you replace the card that had just been completed. However, let's say when completing that card we just showed you, there was another player's gardener here. If there is a gardener on the card that you're completing, and it doesn't matter if it's an opponent's or your own, whoever's token is here will get this back. It will go right back to that player, and the player that's token that was on this would get a large water droplet, which they'll place in their greenhouse. But let's say it was our token that was on there. We would take the token back and we'd get the large water droplet. When you place a large water droplet, again, you place it in any of the open spots, and the large water droplets will help you score points at the end of the game because this droplet is going to be worth the amount of points next to it. This is going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game. But if I placed it here, then it'd be worth 3 points at the end of the game as indicated here, and they only score points for large water droplets, not the small ones. Other than the large water droplet getting you points at the end, what do these other water droplets do? Well, when it's your turn and you're trying to complete a project, let's just pretend this card is in the project row. I brought it closer to here just to make the example a little easier. You wouldn't normally do this. Well, let's say this one needs a purple, 2 orange, and a red. I have a purple, I have 2 orange, I don't have a red. This section is a red flower. Like this one's purple, orange, black, and greenish. Now, if you have water droplets completely filled in that section, you can exchange these or use these, spend them, in order to give it that cutting of that type. So I could spend all these to get me the last cutting I need, which is this red. Now when you do that, the small water droplets go back to the general supply, but the large droplets do not. They can be used multiple times. Of course, that section has to be filled in order to use it, but that basically gave me the red, and I turned in the 2 orange and the 1 purple, and this essentially would be a scored card for me. Now that you know the basics of how the game's played and the turn structure, let me go over one little exception. Here you see the garden, and there's one small water droplet shown here. If someone places their flower bed over the last one, of course they're gonna get the normal cuttings like the purple and the orange. They've put their marker here. If they completed the last one, meaning there's none anywhere else in the garden, they get to basically flip over one of the other garden plots. So players will continue taking turns in clockwise order until either a player has placed their last flower or has completed a certain amount of projects based on the player count. As you see here, if 2 players, once somebody has 8 completed projects, 3 players, 7 completed projects, as we see here, or if playing 4 players, 6 completed projects. When one of those endgame triggers happens, you finish the current round and play one more round, making sure that everyone has had an equal number of turns. Once that final round is over, you'll go to final scoring, which is comprised of 3 different ways to score. First is all your project cards that you've completed. Again, some of them are going to be straight points. Other ones will depend on other things you've done. Use that rules reference in the back of the rulebook to make sure you're calculating all your points correctly, depending on your completed projects. Then you'll get points if you have large water droplets in your greenhouse, and you'll get the points next to those large water droplets. And finally, you get a half point for each flower bed in your supply, small water droplet in your greenhouse, and cuttings. So in this case, we have these 2 as a point, that's a second point, that's a third point, 4th, 5th, that's 5 total points. If let's say you had this and it was 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, 4.5, you don't round, you actually end with 4.5 extra points for this part of your scoring. At this point, whoever has the most points is the winner. If it's still tied, it's whoever has the most flowers in the garden is the winner, and if it's still tied, the tied players each half win. All right, well there's Succulent. Let me first talk about what I liked about the game. The game has a unique theme. I'm tired of seeing the same old themes in games, and Succulent, making your own garden, I like that. Now there's plenty of games out there that have to do with green thumbs and gardens and such, but it is sort of off the beaten path a little bit, not in the mainstream space, zombies, Cthulhu, I'm tired of all that. I like things like this, so this was a positive for me. I'll talk a little bit more of theme a little bit later. Abstracted, puzzly nature of this game, that tends to be Alex Kavern's sort of MO. He's a statistical software person in his day job, and he uses that mathematical brain of his to come up with really interesting concepts that are very mathematical, very puzzly, and this definitely feels like one of his games. If you like his previous games, it'll feel familiar to you in that regard. But I like the abstracted, puzzling nature of this game. You know, placing the pieces, where am I going to go, and things like that. I liked it. This game has simple rules. I mean, you're placing your gardener and taking flower beds, or you're placing them. That's it. And then possibly finishing a project. Rules are very simple, but there's definitely lots to think about, a lot of forward thinking as well. Placing flower beds, when you do that, you're trying to do that and not help your opponents. Meaning, if I place this here, you and you are going to get a water droplet. But if I place it over here, I might get the same two things and nobody gets one. Okay, well, I'll go over here. And so you're trying to figure out how to get the best thing that you can get without helping other players or setting them up for success in the later rounds and such. I like that you're placing your gardener to try to get yourself one of those large droplets. You're planning for that. So it's like, oh, I see that player has purple, orange, red. They're probably going to go for that one. I'm going to move. I don't really need a whole lot of, I've got plenty of flower beds, but you know what? I'm going to use my turn to get that and get more flower beds as well, because they're about to score that and that's going to get me a droplet. I like that. Also, you know what? I have just about as much as I need to get complete a project, but I'm not going to do it this round. Instead, I'm going to go to this card, get me some more flower beds, because next round I'm going to now complete that and I'm going to get myself a large water droplet. Those sort of like the pacing of that and thinking a little bit longer term really is one of my favorite parts of the game. So you've got that longer term strategy scoring cards. So some of them are like, hey, you'll get 1 point for every gray or greenish clipping in all your projects that you've completed. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on those. Or hey, you're going to get 2 points for every piece that's in a straight line all the way through. Okay, so there's I like that some of them are straight points. Some of them are straight points give you bonuses, and some of them are smaller points, but they give you more depending on what you do. So I like that. I like that you can combo big turns, using droplets. So it's like, oh, I have this. I'm going to spend these water droplets, these water, I'm going to use this. I'm going to get this. Oh, this card gets me. I can immediately place a tile. Oh, I'm going to place a flower bed. Oh, gets me another one. And so like sometimes you have some bigger bonuses and bigger turns there, which I really like. For me, one of the biggest positives of this game is the player interaction that I've kind of already mentioned about, placing and trying not to help others, trying to, go where you think they're going to go, set yourself up for later where you can place a piece and maybe get 3 water droplets all in one. So a lot of player interaction that I liked in this game. On the negative side of things, there's a couple of things production-wise. Now, I want to preface this by saying I typically get very early copies of games. Sometimes it's like the first one's off the line, maybe it's their NPC samples or whatever, but the colors, so like on the board, the greenish flowers look kind of green, but then on the cards and on the pieces themselves, it's more of a gray, and I wish those had matched. Either they were all grayish or they were all greenish, but having one and one the other, it was kind of hard to kind of match those two together. Again, it might just be my copy. It might just be a very early copy. I'm not sure. And similar to that, on some of the project cards, there's different shades of brown. There's a dark brown and a light brown, and sometimes it wasn't, after a while you know they're the same, but it kind of throws you for a loop when you're trying to look down the card to see which one you want. Also, the theme, I talked about earlier how I like the theme, but at the same time, it's an Alex Kavern game. It's very abstracted, and the theme could have been anything it's pasted on. So if you're looking for a thematic experience, you're not going to get that here, but that's all the negatives I could say about the game. The gameplay itself, I didn't dislike anything about it. It works. I think for a medium length game, about 45 minutes-ish, it packs quite a bit of punch. And it's one I enjoyed, and that is Succulent. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear. It's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.